Welcome into the DNVR Rockies podcast, brought to you by Strava Craft Coffee. Strava CBD will improve the quality of your morning since it's rich in both CBD and CBG. It's going to have you feeling fantastic in the morning since it's great for helping with chronic headaches, joint pains, IBS. Yeah,
that's the problem sometimes.
That can be, but Strava Craft Coffee is going to help with that. And now you can get 25% off your first purchase at StravaCraftCoffee.com when you use code DNVR25. I am your host, Patrick Lyons, and joining me today is 2021 World Series champion, along with Freddie Freeman, along with Ronald Acuña Jr., Dansby Swanson, Ian Anderson, a few other guys, and somewhere on that list, it's Mr. Andrew Mason.
Where's my ring?
I think it's in the mail.
Yeah, you know what, though? I mean, I have a Super Bowl ring, so I really can't complain. But, you put it that way. And the funny thing is, after I got the Super Bowl ring from the Broncos, because I worked for the team for Super Bowl 50, in my mind I thought, boy, it'd be nice to work with a baseball team someday and get a World Series ring to go with the Super Bowl ring. But, that hasn't happened yet. But still, a month and a half after Game 6, I'm still glowing from the Braves winning the World Series. It's gonna be a while before I come down from this high on this.
I want to just talk about the World Series, but does it feel a little bit weird because of the lockout where you don't feel like you're able to bask in it as much as maybe normal?
Not really, no. If the lockout goes into the season and it costs games, I think it's gonna feel that way. And I mean, it's been a long time since baseball lost anything. Now we know it was big when it happened, 94 and 95. But right now, it's just like the NFL lockout of 2011, where, you're losing OTAs, you're losing the minicamp, blah, blah, blah. But the only game the NFL lost in that lockout 10 years ago was the Hall of Fame game in Canton, which nobody really cares about anyway. They kept the entire rest of the preseason. They kept the entire rest of the regular season, and thus, even though it dominated off-season talk,
right?
The fact that they resolved it right at the start of training camp, it was forgotten like that, and so I'm really it's still kind of an enjoyment if this persists into March or April, if we start having to say, we're losing even like a few weeks of spring training and we start losing regular season games, then it's going to feel a lot different. But right now, it doesn't. I think it's still something to savor. It's just weird to go on the Braves official website and see that it's like it didn't happen because they can't mention any current players. So it's so odd to kind of look on there and see so little celebration in that digital sphere, which I always say, like, a team website is kind of one of the front porches of the organization, and on their digital media as well, overall on their social media platforms, and they can't really do anything to commemorate it because they can't mention anything with active players.
Commemorate it or just simply celebrate it. Like, you can't go and go back and watch some of those highlights, where now would be a time where you'd want to, because you say, all right, it's a lockout. We don't know where Freddie Freeman's going to land. We'll touch on that. You're in limbo emotionally with that, but you can go, that doesn't matter. Let's just go back and watch those games from October.
Right.
And you can't really do that. I imagine you can probably find them on YouTube somewhere, but it isn't exactly the same. You've done this already.
Of course I have. I mean, because sometimes you just find yourself putting it on there. I know there's a blogger. He's Dayton Headley. He's at Braves America on Twitter. Who every night he's rewatching one of the playoff games and is kind of reliving it without the tension. See, you know how tense, if you've got an emotional investment in a playoff game, that how tense it can be. You can't really enjoy it. So there's something nice about kind of sitting back. I would say on a cold December night, but we're not really having cold December nights here right now in Colorado, to sit back on a December night and just kind of put the game on, and without kind of the tension pulling you in a million different directions emotionally with every pitch, just enjoy kind of how the games kind of played out. You really you and all the way through, not just the World Series, but all the way through the postseason, because for this team, all the heroes started popping up first in the Milwaukee series in the divisional round, and then on against the Dodgers. And honestly, you look back on it, not that the World Series wasn't special, but I think the emotional high point, looking back on it, was probably beating the Dodgers because of what that colossus loomed as toward the Braves. Like, they lost to them in 2018, they lost to them in 2020 in 7 games, and it was like, this team kind of slayed the giant. And that's that one thing that the Braves and Rockies share in common is is a hatred for the Dodgers right now.
That's it.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's okay.
I hate the Dodgers. And even after beating them in games, after the Braves beat them in 6 games, I still hate them. And that is like, if you're looking at today, right now, in this moment, they're not in the same division, but that's a rivalry right now.
Yeah.
But it was a one-way rivalry until the NLCS. And so one of the things I'm really interested to see in the coming years is if the Braves do remain a contender, the Dodgers certainly will because of their budget. But if the Braves do, then how does that dynamic change now that the Braves took something from the Dodgers? It was a one-way rivalry before. Now I think it could be a real rivalry.
Yeah, coast to coast.
Yes.
And as you said, going back, it takes the stress off if you
Yeah.
go back and watch those games. It's something I know Rockies fans do when it comes to 2007. Obviously, different result, but you're able to enjoy it, appreciate it more. There, you know the outcome. But for Atlanta, it was much different because they were very much the underdogs the entire offseason. And, obviously now we know who the stars were. We know who broke out. We know who the MVPs were of the NLCS and the World Series. Yeah. But nevertheless, it was Freddie Freeman and a cast of characters, so to speak. I mean, Dansby Swanson's okay. Ozzie Albies, I think, is somewhat underrated. He's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. But it's really just those two in the everyday lineup and a cast of guys that you say, well, if they play their hearts out, maybe they could get it done. And they actually did.
And it's fascinating to kind of look at those series and who were the best players in every series. Now, Freddie Freeman was pretty steady throughout.
Yeah.
But in the divisional series, the hero was Jock Peterson. In the NLCS, it was Eddie Rosario. And in the World Series, of course, the MVP was Jorge Soler. And it's just, and that's part of, I think, what makes baseball special is that here you have a team, and you mentioned, Ozzie Albies on a Hall of Fame trajectory, Freddie Freeman on a Hall of Fame trajectory, and of course, Ronald Acuña wasn't available, but like he's kind of a straw that stirs the drink when he's in that lineup.
For sure.
And then you look kind of at their pitching. Charlie Morton is kind of the old kind of Haas, and he had some terrific starts. And Max Fried, has ace stuff to him, but the heroes of that run were round by round Peterson, Rosario, Soler, and then you go in the pitching, Ian Anderson taking going no-hitter through 5, and then the bullpen, which had been maligned for most of the year. Will Smith, I mean, if you look on my Twitter feed and look up when I typed Will Smith during the season, it was never good because he was if he wasn't blowing a save, he was on the edge of blowing it. And somehow in the postseason, the switch flips, and he's Pete, Craig Kimbrell, Mariano Rivera at that point.
He was what Daniel Bard was for the Rockies, I think, a lot this season, or Wade Davis in the past. But you're right. He finds it, and we can't, again, this being a Rockies podcast, we can't forget Nutsack.
And that's the other thing. Like, what Tyler Matzek did, and it's funny because Game 6 of the NLCS, Luke Jackson is one of those guys who's on the edge and sometimes collapses. He's I'd say a little bit of an emotionally and mentally fragile guy in the bullpen because when it falls apart, it falls apart. You can kind of see the confidence on his face ebbing, like, oh God, oh God, oh God. So Luke Jackson pitches the Braves into trouble in the top of the 7th inning in Game 6 of the NLCS. And he's allowed a couple of runs, leaves men on the base paths. And Tyler Nutsack, strikeout. I can't, and the final strikeout was against, I believe, Albert Pujols. Maybe that might be Albert Pujols' final at bat. Albert Pujols, who, I mean, where would you put him all time among players? Top 20?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the 20 best
He might
players.
even be in the back end of top 10.
Right. One of the greatest players ever to play the sport. Yes, he's not who he is, but it's still, Pujols had some power and some pinch hitting appearances this year. It's
that's
still,
all you need, one
still
swing.
Albert Pujols in there. And that might have been Pujols' final at bat, and Matzik struck him out. I mean, I get chills thinking about
You're glowing,
it.
my man. You're glowing. Where are the pearls? You didn't bring the pearls
Oh,
today?
you know what? I didn't have pearls, but I had like a. I actually, when they were making a run in the postseason, I got very superstitious.
Uh-oh.
So I got superstitious about a specific pair of Atlanta Braves socks. So I realized, because I would wear like a pair of blue and red Braves socks when I covered games, like just underneath my khaki pants and whatever. And I realized early in October that they had not lost in the first 3 games the Broncos played. I wore the same pair of Braves socks. The Braves won every one of those Sundays, and the Broncos won. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe there's something in the socks. And so I started wearing them almost every day. And literally, I'd be washing those socks at night, putting them in the dryer, and then wearing them the next day. That's how insane I got. So I had the socks, and I had a little kind of cloth, little necklace thing that I wore that I think there are probably a couple of podcasts I did where people can see underneath my collar that I was wearing it. I didn't have it today. I should have worn
Atlanta,
it today.
are you hearing this? This man deserves a ring. Do you hear what he did for your organization to lock down the World Series?
And I know there's no
Socks.
there's no rational reason for superstition. I get it, okay? But these are the things that as a fan you do that are irrational, and they're stupid, and they're crazy to anybody who hasn't lived the experience as a fan. But in that moment, you think somehow that makes sense. And if you forget to wear the socks, like, oh my God, they lost today. It's because I didn't wear the socks, and you start blaming yourself. Oh, and I mean, I had another superstition I had was I could watch, but I couldn't listen to the broadcast for a while, or if I couldn't watch, like there were some moments where I couldn't watch because I was driving, but I would listen. And so for the NLDS and the NLCS, if I had the game on, I was watching, I'd listen to something else. I'd listen to a song on repeat or something like that. In the World Series, I realized that lost its mojo, so I just listened to. But that meant I had to listen to Joe Buck and John Smoltz, which was kind of a tiresome experience at times.
We figured it out.
Especially
you figured out what Atlanta needed to win.
Yeah, it was a sliding scale. But oh my God, if I say that to people who aren't diehard sports fans, and even a lot of people who are, they must think
Mental
this
illness.
guy is crazy. This guy needs psychiatric help. But in
no,
that moment, it makes sense as a fan.
You're a fan, and we're fans here at the DNVR Bar, and there's all kinds of new superstitions that are breaking out on a day-to-day basis when we have our watch parties down here at the corner of Colfax in York at the DNVR Bar. Breck Brew is on tap, our official beer. We even have their hard seltzer, Good Company hard seltzer in stock. Make sure you're signing up to the DNVR.com. 50 cents for your first month. You can get articles by me covering all the Rocky stuff. And Mase is also doing a wonderful job on the Broncos beat. A lot of you already know what he's doing there for that. So get an annual membership. You get a free t-shirt, a bigger beer when you're down at the bar. The list is really endless when you become a member of the DNVR.com. As I said, Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer, Avalanche Ale, Strawberry Sky, Vanilla Porter Jr. Is that what you got now? You drinking one?
No, it's too early in the morning. I mean, but one of our sponsors, DNVR, is Ball, and I know Ball made this aluminum can as well that I've got.
That's a good crossover promotion.
I should have, but I screwed up. I realized I had the wrong koozie. I didn't bring my Braves koozie. Instead, I got Tampa Bay Lightning. And again, you talk about this just being my year. The Lightning is back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. The Braves win the World Series. Manchester City wins the Premier League. The Bucks win the Super Bowl. This is the age of Aquarius sports-wise for me.
Everything you touch turns to gold. This is fantastic. Yeah. That koozie will keep your Breck Brew nice and cold. Got to know too that their 15-can sampler from Good Company Hard Seltzer can be found in King Soopers, Costco, wherever, and they're donating profits to the National Parks Conservation Association as well. It's Breckenridge Brewery's Good Company Hard Seltzer, an easy choice for a great company. And listen up, fellas. This episode of DNVR Rockies is brought to you by our favorite producers of beard trimmers, quote unquote. Manscaped, the global leaders in below the waist grooming, are leaving 2021 with a new product. Get clean and refreshed for the new year with their ultra premium body wash. Also, keep in mind that code DNVR at Manscaped will get you 20% off and free shipping. 4 million men already trust Manscaped. It's time you join them. Well,
first of all, I gotta say, like, I think we're missing one thing here on a Manscaped baseball promo, because you got to use Manscaped products. You've got to get the Performance Package 4.0 to take care of those hard balls that you got.
There you go.
Or are they soft balls? Whatever they are, Manscaped will take care of them.
We need Tyler Matzik to be a global ambassador. If your name is Nutsack,
yes, that's
your nickname. Kale, where does that rank on sports nicknames? Nutsack. Think about that one. That's
like up there. It's a great nickname.
It's good if you're a good player.
He likes it, but I think it's a great nickname for like us in the media to be able to use.
I think he does. If we're being honest, I think he really kind of relishes what he became. Like somebody who, especially given what he went through and how things especially how things devolved here in Colorado toward the end.
Overcame so much adversity mentally, right? On that mental side.
It's the mental side.
I mean, we don't talk about enough.
Toward the end, I mean, it was close to a Rick Ankiel level of meltdown.
Getting the yips.
Yeah, and I mean that's scary for a pitcher. It's scary for a golfer. But I mean, with a pitcher, the thing is, you get the yips, and it is literally dangerous for you to be out there.
Yeah,
you're a lethal weapon. I mean, and so it's to see where he came from, and I went back thanks to a Dave Willie of CBS 4 one day. He said, "Hey, I've got the video of Matzik's last appearance with the Rockies.
Really?
Against the Diamondbacks back in 2015.
Yeah.
He pitches 2 innings, and 6 walks, 3 hits allowed in 2 innings. But it's not just those numbers. Don't
6 walks is
But
wow.
Yet that number of walks doesn't detail the complete lack of control that he had at that point.
Sure.
It was agonizing to watch from a human perspective. It was frightening that he literally does not know where the ball is going when it leaves his hand.
Because it was deteriorating even before that. It wasn't like, wow, what happened? That was a really bad start. And then, ho-hum, he doesn't, come back ever again. No, it was already, hey, this could be your last shot. And he went out and it's a sad sight anytime that happens. And Daniel Bard was there too, several years ago, had an even longer period of time away from the game, still tried to have numerous comebacks, and only recently, he kind of was able to figure it out. And so you love hearing that. Sure, it would have been better if he figured it out with the Rockies, but good for Matzik for figuring it out when he was with Atlanta.
And they figured out his pictures. I mean, I mentioned Rick Ankiel. Ankiel literally had to transition to being an outfielder.
That's right.
And started his journey. He went all the way back down to the St. Louis Cardinals Rookie League affiliate. I believe it was in Johnson City, Tennessee. And had to
Appalachian League.
Yeah, exactly. He had to work his way back every step back up. And the funny thing that kind of ties into Atlanta is that in 2010, a guy they traded for their stretch drive and who started for them in the postseason when they lost to the Giants in the divisional series, Rick Ankiel, was in their outfield that year. So
baseball can be cyclical in that way.
You love stories like that, but the stories are great and heartwarming. But I think we don't necessarily appreciate, even though we love the stories that's happening, we don't appreciate just what it means to say he was out of Major League Baseball for 5 years.
Yeah.
What that kind of wilderness was like.
Not toiling away in the minors and
he was in the independent leagues.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's not under the being a professional ball player can mean a lot of things. One is, okay, you're under the umbrella of minor league baseball. You still have top-notch coaches. You're getting opportunities. You're still in the best of the best. Maybe we're talking about the best of the 20-year-olds, 21, 22. But when you're playing independent ball as a professional, in some leagues in the past, they're making $57 a week. That's it. It's really, you're just getting the opportunity to play against high-caliber players who also have their issues that they're trying to overcome. Maybe it's injury. More likely it could be mentally or just simply physically. They're not that talented.
Right.
And you're right. He went all the way back there, the Texas Air Hogs, to try and figure it out.
Yeah.
And so, that's a great story. I'm curious now. So you win the World Series. And there's work to be done now for next year. How much are you starting to think about Freddie Freeman as a free agent. Obviously, Peterson, Soler. Dansby Swanson only has one more year before his free agency. How much are you thinking about that, or do you just put it out of your mind and really just try to celebrate?
You try to enjoy it, and I think in the moment, because nothing can happen either way on Freddie Freeman during the lockout, you just kind of, it actually gives you a chance to kind of breathe and appreciate it. But that is kind of in the background, and you start wondering, well, why haven't they gotten this done? And I think, there are some complicating factors there with Atlanta, starting with the fact that it's owned by a corporation. It's not, you have nominally John Malone, CEO of Liberty Media, is the owner, but still it's a corporation where they're pretty strict on the budget they set. And now things work in their favor. There's a lot of revenue coming in from the World Series, for example, and there's a lot of, and the fact that they developed that area around their park, the Battery that they have, and McGregor Square is kind of the Rockies' way of trying to get in on that. But it's basically it's a couple of blocks, right? 1 block, 2 blocks, maybe. Whereas the Braves had more land, and they've got an entire, it goes back several blocks. There's multiple hotels.
It's also 30 minutes outside of the center of the city, which isn't great.
It isn't great, but Atlanta's so sprawling that even though kind of geographically it would be like putting Coors Field and a development around it, around say
Dick's Sporting Goods Park,
or about maybe like if you go south, it'd be like putting it say in the southern part of DTC, like between Orchard Road and Arapahoe Road. So
it's a very specific thing. Do you have plans? Do you know something we don't?
No, it's not specific. Although I do wonder if the Rapids would have been better off kind of building. There's that big development that's been going up around Bellevue and I-25, Bellevue Station, and I look and I think this land would have been perfect for a soccer stadium because it's a little closer in. But the weakness of Dick's Sporting Goods Park is it's not on any rail lines.
Right.
It's not on public transit. Whereas you see, like, for example, the soccer, and this is kind of a little thread jack here, the soccer stadium they built down in Austin is right by the rail line. In Atlanta United plays at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, so you can take the train to the match, and you don't have that option with Dick's Sporting Goods Park here. And so that's an issue. And I was just trying to kind of frame it in a way that people would understand.
Sure. No, it's perfect.
But one of the things the Braves have going for, look, everybody lost money in the pandemic with no games, etc. But the Braves, the Battery, was still making money for them, even though the restaurants were struggling, because a huge component of that is rental properties. Several square blocks of rental properties. The Rockies decided to go for the sale model with McGregor Square with the residences, and so that's kind of the one-time thing.
Quick cash.
The Braves chose to have rental properties be the thrust of it, and so
take some risk, but over the long term, it's going to pay off. And really, and so as you're saying, Atlanta historically really hasn't gone out and spent huge in free agency, at least since the 90s, with, like you said, with Liberty. But another influx of money they have coming is Endeavor Group Holdings. I don't know if you've caught wind of this news yet, but something that's happening now in minor league baseball now with these affiliations with, or rather player development contracts with major league clubs, is that teams are staying with their club for a decade. So there's a lot more certainty. They've weeded out some of the I don't want to say riffraff, but they weeded out some of the weaker facilities, and the weaker cities and markets, and so now there's only 120 that are out there, and they've lifted some of the restrictions where previously you couldn't own multiple teams in the same league, and now that's all out there. So Liberty Media and Atlanta, they own all their minor league affiliates, except now they're going to sell all of those. Boom, that's even more money that's going to allow you to afford Freddie Freeman. If you don't bring back Freddie Freeman, people are going to be pissed because you've got that money. And
they opened they were back at full capacity before almost anybody else, and I believe in attendance they ended up only behind the Dodgers in the National League.
Wow, I didn't realize they were that high.
When all was said and done, and part of it was because they opened sooner. They started at I believe 25%, and then they very quickly they were 33%, and then they were at full capacity by mid-May, and the crowds came back pretty quickly. There was, it helps that it's a good team. There was pent-up demand to watch a team that had just gone to the NLCS the previous year.
They were just as good in the
Right.
first half of the season as in the second, because, again, a lot is made of the
Right.
four outfielders that Alex Anthopoulos, the GM,
Yeah.
had acquired at the deadline, but Ronald Acuña is as good as all four of those guys combined.
And he
in
was
many ways.
propping up that lineup. Like it
Yeah.
was interesting when Acuña was a one-man show because Freeman was slumping. Marcell Ozuna, of course, he was struggling, and then he got arrested for the domestic
Right.
violence charges, and he didn't play the rest of the season. Acuña was the load-bearing pole holding up that entire lineup. When he tore his ACL, honestly, I thought the season is done. On that Saturday afternoon in Miami, and he's crumpled on the grass in right field, and you're just like, okay, this is over.
That's awful.
It was horrifying, and you knew the moment it happened that okay, he tore at least one ligament. You hope it's not two or three ligaments.
Or career-ending,
Right.
even worse than that.
And it was a complete effort hustle play, like that he makes when he's out there. He's out there in the outfield. That's who he is. You can't take that out of him. But at the same time, you mentioned Anthopoulos and the trades and the deals they made. And part of it, again, there's credit to Liberty Media as well for kind of it within the budget being
true.
able to make that happen. But you have all the revenue that comes in from winning the World Series. You had all the revenue coming in from the Battery, even when things were struggling. There are revenue streams the Braves have that put them. They're not in Dodgers, Yankees category, but they're in that next tier, with like teams like the Philadelphia Phillies, for example. The New York Mets have a different budget because Steve Cohen is blasting the budget. But in terms of revenue generation, that's kind of where the Braves are. They're very solidly in that second tier, and because of that, to me, there's no excuse to not re-sign Freddie Freeman in terms of the financial value. I do think the thing that they're wondering about, it's the length of the contract and thinking, all right, what is this going to be like if you re-sign him for 7 years? What is that going to look like when he's in his age 36, 37 seasons? Is he going to drop off like a lot of guys do? And I believe that is some of the hesitancy there on the part of the Atlanta Braves. I think it's less a budget thing and more of a looking at how players age. But at the same time, I think there are two things in play. Number one, you've re-signed Albies and Acuña to deals that are incredibly team-friendly.
I do want to get to that, the specifics of that. But you're right. They've saved a lot of money on two star players.
And, okay, eventually you're going to, like Acuña, if he has the career that you expect him to have, eventually you're going to have to pay him. But if you give Freeman a 7-year extension, then Freeman would come off your books at the same time a bigger Acuña deal would come onto your books. So I feel like if you're making some long-term planning here for the Atlanta Braves, it adds up to do this, because if Acuña recovers nicely and stays healthy, he should be a great player into his 30s, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you forget how young he is, but I mean, he was there at age 20, already an impact player. I mean, that's the thing. He's not even 25 years old yet.
You know who's getting paid? People on the front line of the aluminum beverage can production plant
that make aluminum cans
Golden.
like this, by the way.
Ball.
That's here in my koozie. Ball made this can.
$27 an hour they're paying at. Comprehensive insurance, active the day of hire, 401k, retirement programs, stock purchase deals. There's all kinds of things they're throwing your way, including annual bonus, potential for increase at 6, 12, and 18 months. Right now, they're looking for folks with technical and mechanical skills. You could find about that and any other opportunities at Ball's Golden Plant. When you text Golden to 77222, you'll get linked to all those open positions. You can also go directly to jobs.ball.com and search for Golden. It's Christmas week, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA, has a gift that'll certainly put you in the holiday spirit. New customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win. And when they do, you get $150 in free bets. It's a great way to put some extra jingle in your pocket. All DraftKings Sportsbook customers can also get in the Christmas spirit with the holiday free bet surprise. Get this, Mase. Everyone gets a free bet up to $50 instantly, as DraftKings gives away up to $10 million in prizes. DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. And best of all, you can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code DNVR. Bet just $5 on any NBA team, and you win $100, $150 in free bets if they're victorious. That's promo code DNVR this Christmas week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Let's see if I can do it as quickly as RK does. Are you as fast on the draw reading the end of the DraftKings read?
No, I take my time with it.
Okay, I'm going to try to go RK speed. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. New customers only. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700.
That's nice. That's really good.
Thank
I should
you.
have run the stopwatch on that one. Like I run the stopwatch on Sam Martin punts.
That was quick. That's what he said, not she. He said that. So it's a different thing. It's a good thing. It's a good thing when you're that quick. So Ronald Acuña, Ozzie Albies, they signed these deals that, as a baseball fan for Atlanta, you got to be happy and say, wow, they saved all of this money. Obviously, they're on incredibly team-friendly contracts, but these two deals are somewhat notorious.
Yes.
Is there a part of you that steps back and go, as a person, again, I know we're talking about a $35 million deal for Ozzie Albies over 7 years, and Acuña, hey, it's $100 million, but it's for 8 years. Do you step back and say, I don't feel comfortable with this? This is almost taking advantage. It's too team-friendly. Way too team-friendly.
And from that regard, it bothered me greatly. I'm like, I'm happy they're going to be on my team. But especially like the Albies deal, like you start going down the line, and his comes up 2 years before Acuña, so he goes through the 2026 season. You know what his salary is in 2026?
17?
$4 million.
You said Albies?
Albies,
and he gets $7 million for like 5 years in a row. It's insane.
Next year, it's 5 years for 22, $5 million for 22, then 7, like you said. 3 years at $7 million piece, and then $4 million in 2026. I think
that's worse than the Acuña deal.
It is. It's a lot worse, and part of it was, I think it kind of people were a little shocked that they paid Albies when they did. Acuña's numbers, I mean, they're reasonably robust. Okay, 15 next year. He's starting to get into some of the bigger numbers, and then $17 million a year after that, and then there's options for 27 and 28. In both of these cases, though. This is where, if you really, I know you're kind of, and this is where corporate can kind of work against you because corporate does set a budget. But I do think that, and I'd start with Albies in particular. I think I would start by saying, look, we know what kind of player you are, and Albies is the kind of guy who should age pretty gracefully.
Yeah.
You know, can hit for average, hit for power, excellent in the field.
A shortstop playing second base.
Ultimately. Right, exactly. I think with Albies, you start thinking in terms of, okay, let's see if we can add 3 years onto this deal at some point, but give you bumps on the back end of this.
Right.
And then I think if they do that, then it might lead to a template that you just kind of make bigger for Acuña because of the value that he has compared to Albies. And start thinking in those terms, like those option years, 27 and 28 for Acuña. If I'm the Braves, I'm thinking there are options on those years, but we're going to be tearing up that deal to do right by him,
right?
And then keep him, and then that allows us to keep him around for longer.
And that's what Tampa did with Evan Longoria, where
right?
They had some kind of similar situation.
Yes,
they said, "All right, well, we almost feel bad about it." Of course, they did go to the World Series in 2008, so that kind of helped some things. But you're right. I think that it gives them a lot more leverage to keep these guys in Atlanta as long as they would like. What's interesting too with Acuña. Again, $100 million is really good, but two things jump out about that. One, he comes from a baseball family. Like he has a couple cousins. He's cousins with Alcides Escobar, Kelvin Escobar, Vicente Campos,
right?
Father and son duo, the Escobars. So like, I would think he would have gotten some good advice, not from his agents, but from his family to say, hold off a little bit, because had he held off, he could have gotten almost a Tatis Jr. type deal.
Yeah.
Because Tatis, which is what's interesting too, is, Tatis got his deal after playing, 2 years. His service time was 2 years, but he had only played 143 games at that point after the 2020 season. Got hurt in 2019, so shortened year. And then we only have 60 games in the pandemic shortened season last year. And so he's got 143 games under his belt. Acuña wins the Rookie of the Year in 2018, having played only 111. But because Tatis had that extra year of service time, it put him 1 year closer to free agency, and it made him that much more costlier. It's the difference between 8 years, $100 million, and 14 years, $340 million was 1 year. Otherwise, Acuña could have had something in that ballpark.
Right, and I wonder if the Braves would have given that type of deal, just because we see the reluctance to give the Freddie Freeman contract. So
Sure.
there are numbers, I think, that do make them blank, even though they are. If you look at the revenue streams from the Battery, and one of the things interesting about the Braves is because they're part of a publicly traded company, and there's actually kind of they're part of that. The baseball part of it is split out, so we get kind of the revenue. We get the revenue statements every year.
Yeah, I think it's Atlanta and also Toronto.
Right,
where
Atlanta,
they're publicly
because
owned.
Toronto is Rogers, right?
That's right.
And Atlanta, of course, is Liberty, and then
Otherwise, all the
Yeah.
other 28 teams, it's behind closed doors. Players don't even know
Right.
what's going on with that. And there's also those things of, like you said, with the Battery in Atlanta, McGregor Square, everything that the Chicago Cubs have done around Wrigley Field, these real estate ventures that these teams are able to utilize as leverage. The players don't see any of that money, and that also ties in with the lockout of, hey, look, we're seeing our salaries go down by a couple of percentage points here and there, and there's money that we're not even talking about getting that maybe we should, and yet the owners don't even want to give them a fair cut of the revenue.
And here's what's and interesting. Like we saw, the second quarter revenues for the Braves. That is April through June of this year. They were $219 million, which, again, they weren't at full capacity until about halfway through that in the park. $219 million. So that was a $13 million increase over their revenues from the same period 2 years earlier. Now you're kind of throwing out 2020 because of the pandemic, but the fact that they were not only able to kind of recoup but get it back. Yes, everybody lost a lot in the pandemic in 2020, but the Braves, the ability to bounce back, and then simply where their revenues can go in the afterglow of a World Series. I mean, we saw it at Coors Field in 2008. Even though the Rockies struggled the year after making the World Series, there was a significant attendance bump that year from 2007 to 2008. There was still that glow that resulted in pretty robust sales of tickets throughout the year.
Because you're celebrating it. And that's another one of those things that would get really frustrating with the lockout. I mean, even think about the pandemic, how if you were a Nationals fan in 2020, where was your celebration of the entire 2019 season and raising the banner? Obviously they eventually did it in 2021, but all the bobbleheads, the commemorative rings, all of those things, you miss out on it over a period of time if you have to wait. And so that would be a shame for Atlanta to be able to cash in on that. And people are saying, well, yeah, Pittsburgh Pirates are coming to town, but shoot, they're giving away this cool shirt or a rally towel on a Thursday night or Wednesday day game.
Yeah.
I got to get a ticket so I can go, and boom, that's all that added revenue from winning a World Series.
And that stuff matters. I mean, just in a normal year, I remember talking with somebody from the Braves years ago that for a long time they would do their bobblehead nights on Tuesday or Wednesday night.
That's smart, yeah.
Yeah, because all of a sudden you turn a night that you'd announce 22,000, but realistically probably about 14 or 15 were in the park.
Yeah.
And everybody does that, right?
You walk through the gate, you get your bobblehead, you leave, and then you might even have a second. Now,
but no, they announce attendance is the tickets sold. So literally, what I was told is that when they do a bobblehead, those bobbleheads as a giveaway, they aren't cheap to produce.
No.
I mean, it's not something you're producing for 50 cents, right? I mean, it's cost of, each unit.
I imagine, maybe in the $8 range.
Each unit,
which again doesn't really seem like a lot, but
each unit is $6 to $8. But if you see a corresponding bump that's beyond that, what I was told is that they basically, the number of people in the park when they do it midweek doubles when they do a bobblehead. So in terms of people in the park, and then announce attendance beyond that, you go from announcing, say, 21,000 to announcing an average of 33 or 34,000, and then you take all those people and what they're spending on parking and concessions and souvenirs, and you don't want to do it too often because you don't want to make it routine to where people are kind of ho-hum at it, but these things do have an impact. These giveaways have an impact, and especially coming off a championship when it's all going to be kind of commemorating that. They're probably going to do like a replica. There's going to be like a replica ring that is like a paperweight, you know, and there'll be a replica trophy, and there'll be a bobblehead with some guy holding up the trophy and that kind of thing. And all these are further drivers for a market that, while they do fine supporting the team on the long haul. I know there's the whole thing of, they didn't sell out playoff games back in the 1990s. They sell out their playoff games now. I mean, it's a smaller park, but that's not the issue that it used to be. But it's still a market where you have to Atlanta's a market where you have to push just a little bit. It's not like Fenway where they just open the gates and everybody comes in. You've got to.
It's not a destination in that same way.
And because
it's not in the city,
right? And because it's not in the city, and it's not on a public transit line, you've got to have people make the effort to come out. Now, a lot of their fans are within about 20 minutes of the stadium in the northern suburbs, but still, you know, you're doing that. You're doing that at rush hour. You have a 7:20 first pitch, and you're telling people, okay, through Atlanta traffic, get home, get the family, come out to the game. Yeah. There's an effort, especially midweek. There's an effort involved,
right?
Like Atlanta, Friday and Saturday games, they're selling those out or close to it on Fridays and Saturdays. Sunday, not so much, because it gets freaking like the thing that, like, if Atlanta screwed up on one thing with that stadium, it's not a retractable
dome.
For two reasons. Number one, it gets freaking hot as blazes for a day game in the summer, and you see it when they're playing on a Sunday afternoon in the summertime. It's packed it is packed to the gills on the first base side of the stadium.
Yeah, that's where the shade is.
Right. On the third base side, it's a ghost town. Like, you see all these empty seats. And they'll announce like 34,000 for a Sunday game, and yet you'll see that it's about 1/3 full on one side because it's so hot. Everyone's kind of on the concourse and they're milling around, and you know, they're doing all the other stuff you do at a ballpark these days. So
and that's what's so perfect about Coors Field. Yeah, obviously in the summer, if you're sitting out in the rock pile, you know, you're going to bake a little bit, but there's
not
plenty
humid.
of room.
Yeah.
Right, it's not humid. It is downtown, and it does, you know, Coors Field is, you know, basically like it's a baby Fenway or a baby Wrigley, where it's become this destination, I think, for so many people. That's why the attendance is always so great, because, you know, it's been said a million times over, when people come to Colorado in the summertime, on their to-do list is, got to go to Coors Field,
right?
Because it's been there, it's been around. It's not that it's maybe state of the art and it's got all these flashy bells and whistles like, you know, SunTrust Park might have. Or is it Truist Park now?
It's now Truist.
Truist.
I mean, they've already...
I caught myself.
Yeah, 5 years in, they've already had to change the name, which really screws it up.
That is strange.
Yeah, like I still call it SunTrust from time to time, and it's like Mile High, which was Invesco, and then it was Sports Authority. Now it's Empower. You keep changing it so many times, the name, it has less value the more you change the name. Coors Field
has more value to the team, though.
Right. It does,
but not
less,
to the fans.
But like fans reflexively don't get the name right. For like, I mean, it's easy to just call the stadium where the Broncos play Mile High.
But I catch myself saying Invesco.
Oh,
all the time.
You do?
And
I do too.
Like
That's awesome.
That's like 3 names ago.
It is.
Yeah, I still do too. I mean, it's going to be a long time before Ball Arena is Ball Arena for me. I'm still calling it Pepsi Center from time to time. It's hard to kind of break that.
You got to keep track of how many times, or even if you say the can, like, oh no, the jar. I mean, Ball Arena.
Yeah, the best corporate names are beer sponsors, because it goes so well with baseball, right? Coors Field, Busch Stadium. I mourn the loss of Miller Park in Milwaukee.
You don't like American Family Field? Kale, did you know that? This past year, it went from Miller Park. You're like, yeah, obviously it's Milwaukee, and now it's American Family Field.
And they're nicknamed
almost as bad as Petco. That's really bad.
And they're nicknamed the Brewers. Okay, I mean, they're the Milwaukee Brewers.
They're brewing up great family insurance, Mase.
Oh my God.
That's what they're doing. They're brewing up some good insurance rates. You know,
it's terrible. I can't. The one that works. And it's because of the name itself. It's not beer. Raymond James Stadium in Tampa. That's the only name that that Buck Stadium has had since opening in 1998.
Hasn't had any sponsorship like tie-ins?
Raymond James is the sponsor. It's a brokerage firm.
There you go.
But that's the thing. You hear it and you think it's named after some guy named Raymond James. Raymond James is actually two people named Raymond, surnamed Raymond and James. And but that's the beauty of that is it just sounds like they named it after some person named Raymond James.
That's like someone
that has some elegance to it. Whereas Sports Authority Field at Mile High, I'm sorry, that was a terrible name. Absolutely, that was dreadful. Dick's Sporting Goods Park, that's not good.
I beg to differ. I was gonna say Colorado has some good arena names.
It's too many
syllables.
It's too many syllables,
and it's forever.
Yeah, Dick's Sporting Goods is too much.
I don't know about you, but I'm going to
snappy.
Dick's. That's the code. I'm going to Dick's.
Well, they often refer to as DSG, like DSG Park.
That works.
But going
to Ball.
It's not snappy enough. Like, and even though beer sponsors work, Breckenridge Brewery, it's a lot of syllables.
Breck, yeah.
But if it were Breck Brew Field, once you say that good. 5 times fast because of the BR sound, Breck Brew Field would work.
That plays.
Yeah.
The Breck Dome.
Ooh.
I mean, who is that? An arena football team? What are we getting here? We gotta.
Maybe that's the replacement for Mile High. If you get a new Moneybags owner I'm thinking if you get a new Moneybags owner who buys the Broncos and says, I'm gonna build a stadium and training complex and maybe a small stadium. I'm gonna build this Xanadu off the between Pena and the A line out toward the airport. And maybe that's your Breck Brew Field.
You can bring an XFL club in there in the springtime.
You're excited for the Breck Dome. You have a big park and a small park. The big park's going to have a dome, so you can have the Final Four. But then you have the mini stadiums, about 20,000 seats. Maybe whoever buys the Broncos buys the Rapids and moves them there. And then all of a sudden, you're farther out, but you're on public transit, so people can ride to the match and ride home. And look, if you've ever been to London or anywhere in Europe where kind of the soccer culture is like, you ride to the max, you have a pint, then you go into the ground. Yeah, that's what we're missing over at Dick's.
We're missing the Breck Dome. It really is
the Breck Dome, Breck Brew Dome.
We are. It's the only other thing as far as Atlanta goes for that is Freddie Freeman. Again, I don't want to bring it up. Now, I'll say this. Their off-season moves, they haven't really done much, and obviously Freddie's going to be the big one if they can get that done. Marcelo Zuna is going to be kind of addition. He was suspended now retroactively, so I think he's going to be back. I like the Jay Jackson deal, a little reliever from the Giants, Darren O'Day on a minor league deal.
O'Day did well for them
He's a
earlier.
Nice little pickup.
And I like Manny Pena as a backup catcher.
That's right.
They've got, they've got a good catching prospect in the system, Shea Langoliers, who they drafted in the first round a couple of years back.
Was he at Gwinnett this year? Did he get up to AAA?
I think he did get there to Gwinnett. He was down at Mississippi in AA for a while
because he was a college guy,
right out of Texas A&M.
So he's going to move a little bit quicker.
But basically, you got Travis d'Arnaud coming back on a short-term deal, and you have Manny Pena. They were caught short last year when d'Arnaud got hurt. And I mean, it was
had to have Stephen Vogt, who then immediately got hurt.
They had the exhumed corpse of Jonathan Lucroy, which was interesting.
In July,
Lucroy was with the Braves for a half minute in July, and then the Brewers honored him at a playoff game in the divisional round against the Braves.
I did not hear that one.
Yes, it was wild,
weird.
Yet Lucroy, he's going to get a World Series ring from the Braves, and the Brewers are honoring him. That is kind of a funky thing that happened. But Pena, who was on Milwaukee last year, now even though doesn't really hit for average, still has a little bit of power. He's good, but he's good at calling a game, and that's one thing because you're beyond. You get beyond Max Fried and Charlie Moore and Ian Anderson.
Some young guys.
He's young. It gets young beyond that. They've got a couple of younger arms that they'd like to see some more from. They're hoping to have Mike Soroka back, but after 2 Achilles, can you really rely on that? That's kind of a bonus. So someone who can call a good game like Pena is going to help. And then, of course, they re-signed Charlie Morton, which I think made all the sense in the world for that team at that moment. Now it's all about Freddie Freeman. And, I mean, if they don't re-sign him, all the afterglow of winning the World Series with that fan base evaporates. It's gone. It is absolutely gone.
He's the bobblehead that you want.
Right. Yeah.
Now there's going to be no commemorative Freddie Freeman World Series bobblehead.
And the other thing about the Braves, even though they're not a Yankees or a Dodgers or a Red Sox in terms of revenue and market, but that is a team that they've usually had, like, at any one time, 1 or 2 players in their lineup that are mainstays that are there for like a decade plus. You think of go back to Dale Murphy in the 1980s, and then you get to the 90s. You had Chipper Jones coming in. They had Glavine and Max and Smoltz on the hill. But as far as an everyday player, Chipper, and then he kind of passed the baton to. But he really passed the baton to Freddie Freeman because McCann actually left after 8 years. So kind of Chipper passed the baton. They were together in 11 and 12. He hands the baton to Freddie, and then I think even now Freddie.
They jettison Jason
It could be
Hayward.
Freddie handing it to Acuña, but I think you want. But the thing is, these are guys with Chipper and Freddie in particular, guys who played 15, 16 years.
The whole career.
And Freddie is going into year 12 if he comes back. Chipper was there from 93 through 2012. And so to me, it kind of makes sense for them in terms of their overall franchise arc. They always like to have kind of that one person. Like Chipper saw some down years in the late 2000s, but he was a reason for people to keep going. Freddie Freeman saw some down years in the mid-2010s. He was a reason to keep going to the park. And so it seemed appropriate to me to re-sign Freeman. And then if you do have to kind of, maybe not rebuild, but retool, then the baton kind of goes to Acuña as the guy who's your 17 or 18 year guy. It's the way the Braves have operated, and that's why it makes sense to re-sign Freeman.
Will you throw the bag at Dansby Swanson? He's got 1 more year before free agency. Is that a worry?
He was good in the postseason, but you're thinking about the cost and the value. I mean, if we're talking, like, he was terrific in 2020. This year, until the postseason, he had a disappointing year, did Swanson. So I'm not really sure about that. I mean, look, the only way I think you could rationalize it in losing Freddie Freeman is if your turnaround was, well, we're going to throw a contract at Trevor Story. Now, there's no indication.
Speculation over here, Mase.
There's no indication
Trevor
that's going
to Atlanta.
I don't think that's happening. Let me make that clear. But the only way you could rationalize that is by throwing the bag at somebody who can be a linchpin player who's a little bit younger.
Right.
But is there any indication that's going to happen? No. There's no sign that is in the offing. But that's the only way you could get away with not re-signing Freddie Freeman, is if there was somebody there that you brought in to kind of fill that gap. Otherwise, the perception is going to be you didn't re-sign Freddie Freeman because you're cheap. And you shouldn't be cheap with the mountains of revenue that are flowing into that franchise on a daily basis, even when you're not playing baseball in the off season, because you still have this neighborhood and you still have these apartments that are almost 100% leased, and you have these restaurants and you have this theater just down the street. You got all these things going on in this complex. You got the 2 hotels. You're generating your money hand over fist with this development. Don't tell me that you can't. And like you said, they just sold their minor league teams, 4 of their minor league affiliates.
All 4 of them.
Right. Don't tell me that you can't afford Freddie Freeman. That's not going to sit well with anybody who follows the Braves.
All right, now's a perfect time for this experiment. We're just going to get your reaction.
Okay.
Since you're already heated up. I'm going to say 5 words twice. Different 5 words. Freddie Freeman, New York Yankee. Okay. All right. He's in pain.
That's not good.
He's on the ropes. I got one more for you.
But at least he's not haunting you on a regular basis in the AL.
I got one more for you.
Yeah.
He's from Canada.
Yeah.
Freddie Freeman, Toronto Blue Jay.
Oh,
you don't look as much in pain. All right, so the Yankees.
I
is
have
the
a little
one
bit
pain.
of an. I kind of like Toronto as a franchise. Part of it
Okay.
is where I lived in Florida. The closest spring training team
Dunedin.
is in Dunedin, the Toronto
Okay.
Blue Jays. There in northern Pinellas County. So I've been to a lot of Blue Jays spring training games over the years. I mean, the Rockies are my second team, but I mean, the Blue Jays are a team that I like.
Yeah. Well, they're an AL
And-
team, so that would
Right.
actually work
Well,
out
the-
okay for you then if you went to Toronto.
I don't want to see him go to Toronto. I want to be in Atlanta. Even though, yeah, the Canada thing is interesting. He grew up in California,
Yeah.
all right? But his mother was Canadian. And so that's why whenever they had the World Baseball Classic,
That's right.
Freddie played for
And he loves
Team
honoring
Canada.
his mother, right? He
Yes.
goes with the long sleeves and all that because of skin cancer and all those things.
Yeah,
So
I don't
remember that. Is there more to that story than I know?
No, I'm just thinking about like how sad that would be if Freddie Freeman left Atlanta.
We're going to go out on that note. So I'm sorry, Mase. Look.
It would be heartbreaking. I mean,
You talked about all your championships. All right, we're trying to honor you with Atlanta. Go slip your last piece.
This
in
is
there.
how Broncos fans probably felt when Von Miller went to the
Right.
Rams, thinking about that. But the difference, though, is that Von is not playing at his peak right now.
Yeah.
Freddie Freeman was just the MVP in 2020.
Yeah.
He was terrific in the postseason in 21. The only thing that kept his numbers down this year was, for a long time, a ridiculously low batting average on balls in play. There was the luck factor involved, and it
Not
started
a lot of protection in the lineup too.
right when Acuña was absent, Acuña went down. So it started to, but even then, it started to normalize late in the season, and he hits for average so well that even as the power fades, this is still going to be a guy who gets on base for you. He's still going to have, so this means he's probably going to age really well. Maybe he's not going to be hitting 20 to 30 home runs a season.
With the DH,
But
that'll help prolong
the
a career.
DH can keep him fresh if you don't want to put him out there at first base every day. And I think there may be some nagging injuries as you get into the late 30s, kind of like Chipper Jones had. But I think, you know how Chipper Jones kind of he aged well because he hit for average and he got on base. Actually, like he flirted
Driving
with
runs.
He flirted with 400, I believe, in his age 36 season of 08 was when he flirted with 400 for a long time that year. And I think Freddie can age like Chipper Jones did. And this is why I'd re-sign him. Just get it done. Again, the power won't be there probably like it was, but he's still he still has the eye. As long as he keeps the quick bat, he's still gonna get on base. To me, it's a no-brainer. The tools on Freddie Freeman should allow him to age very well and be a valuable player into the late 30s. And maybe he won't, like in his age 37 or 38 season, he wouldn't be worth that number, but he's going to be worth more than the number you give him right now.
And it'll be worth more to Atlanta in particular.
Right.
Well, look,
It means something to have a guy who's on a Hall of Fame trajectory and say, nobody's ever going to wear number 5 again. He's a Mandarin player for this
Would be
franchise.
appropriate.
Just do it.
It would be. All right, we came in on a high note.
Yeah.
We're ending on a slightly more somber one. But you know what? You can't win them all, man. You can't win all the championships.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us today, Mase.
My pleasure.
Make sure you're following us on what we do, especially on Twitter at the DNVR_Rockies. 50 cents for your first month at thednvr.com. Makes a great holiday gift. Give it out there. One of the best holiday gifts you could possibly give. And make sure you're coming down to the DNVR Bar on the corner of Colfax, New York, once you get that membership, to get that bigger beer. So for Andrew Mason, our man, super producer Kale, I'm Patrick Lyons. Thanks for tuning in to the DNVR Rockies podcast.